Welcome to the 106 Milan-San Remo. Ask any rider what they think about this event and they'll tell you they would love to win it. Who will? That's the big question. So many riders are capable of delivering victory on this course, which many are saying is the easiest since 2007. Can he do it again? Christophe, our defending champion, is on the road right now. We'll be joining live pictures before you know it. Weather, cloudy. Chance of rain, reasonable. Humidity, as you can see, 67%. But look at that northeasterly wind. It bites at 29 kilometers per hour. Temperatures hovering around 13 Celsius, but on some of the climbs, feeling much cooler up top. Let's check out the course that they're dealing with today. All 293 kilometers of it. The Milan-San Remo, aptly named, starting in Milan and, of course, finishing in San Remo. Not the case for a number of other classics these days who almost seem like a misnomer. This one the riders know all about. They also know about the punishing terrain that they have to deal with. Some say it's a little bit easier. The Pompeiana and the Le Mani are gone. So a classic sprinter's finish, but lots for the punchers to enjoy as well. And when we head over the last couple of climbs, boy, oh boy, the Cipressa and the Poggio, the run to town is very, very quick upon them. Will there be chance for the pack to catch the breakaway riders? Big questions then ahead. There is the course, and we'll find out exactly where we sit right now. They've been over the Turchino. They're heading down towards the coast as we run to those last peaks and troughs. A lot of riders on form, a lot of riders as well who've kind of been masking their form of late, and one of which starts out as one of the out-and-out favourites, Juan Jose Lobato of the Movistar team. He's been busy doing motor pacing just to get the cadence up and ready, and the first part of the day is always about just conserving something, keeping something in the bank, not reaching out and grabbing for it.
That's exactly right, Carlton. You just want to save all of the energy that you possibly can for this final 50 kilometres, because by the time you get there, of course, you've already done 243. So any time you have to chase, make an effort in that first 250 Ks, it's going to show towards the end. So you want to just try and conserve all the energy and at least take it easy in this neutralised zone. We have seen riders crash in the past on the tram lines in Milan, but no foolers at the start today. In fact, there's only been one rider has retired so far from the race, Christophe Riblon from the French AG2R team.
One non-starter as well, Martin Vachour for Team Novo Nordisk, one of the sponsors of this race. And finally, when we got the flag underway, it wasn't long, of course, before you had some of the hopefuls, and you'd have to be very hopeful to be out there all day in a break. One did form, though, and Andrea Perron from Team Novo Nordisk was one of those that made it into the break. I believe it's 11 riders. We'll get to that in a moment's time. Marc Cialinghi from Team Lotto Jumbo in their yellow and black. Serge Pauwels for MTN Quebec, making it for the Zebras from South Africa. He's in the break as well. Likewise, Matteo Bono keeping interest alive up front for Lampre Merida and maybe Pippo Pozzato, or particularly local boy Nicolo Bonifacio, starting the day at 150 to 1, I might add. Sebastian Molano is there for Team Colombia. They've not shone brightly in grizzly weather of late, although of course you know all about Quintana, who doesn't ride for Colombia but very much part from that part of the world. Adrian Kurek is up there as well for CCA Sprandi Polkovici. You have Gregor Boller perhaps in mind, but is very much a long shot in some elevated company today. Bora Aragon have got Jan Bartet in the break. That's a good call. Sam Bennett is running well, the Irishman. Will be grateful that he's got a teammate up there. Stefano Pirazzi, the man who was blown off the bike on the Strada Bianchi, is back on the bike, and he's in the break as well, as ever it seems. He loves a breakaway chance, and of course he's turned it into victory on a stage of the Vuelta in the past. Frapporti and Del Antonio from Antroni Giocattoli make it a brace of riders from Gianni Savio's team, and Julien Berard from AG2R Le Mondial. That's your breakaway. Their maximum was around about 7 3/4 minutes. It's been pared back as the pace has been high, and today, of course, they are now at the, as we will join them, they're at the lower part of today's course, having gone over the Turchino a little while ago. So let's join the riders, shall we, as they head inexorably to San Remo and our finish. Here they are, our breakaway men, and indeed a pack that seems reasonably motivated, with Still more than 100 kilometres to go.
Yeah, predominantly so far. Since that breakaway's been gone, the peloton here has been controlled by the Russian Katusha team. They've, of course, got the defending champion in their ranks and one of the big favourites for today's race, Alexander Kristoff from Norway. Helping them now, I believe, are the Tinkoff Saxo squad, the Danish World Tour team. They are, of course, working for their man, Peter Sagan, who took his first win just a few days ago on the penultimate stage of Tirreno Adriatico. He's a man who's just coming into form, and that win will have given him some important confidence coming into today's stage. But as you said at the top of the programme, Carlton, we've got so many riders who are capable of winning this race today. We've already mentioned Etienne Kubeka. Amazingly, for a pro-continental squad, they've got 2 previous winners here in this race today, Matt Goss and, of course, the winner a couple of years ago, Gerald Ciolek. So they'll also be playing a prominent role, I would imagine, as this race reaches its closing stages.
Well, Mark Cavendish spoke to us this morning very, very briefly. He is a man who, of late, has been blowing candles out, I'm afraid, in a bad way. He's had his tummy upsets. It may well have weakened him. And he's rather strangely, I guess, engaged in racing in South Africa, which is a long old flight, as you know, from Central Europe all the way down and all the way back. Lovely climb down there, nonetheless. However, I just wonder whether about the wisdom of going on such a long-distance trip at this time of the year. And Mark didn't look particularly happy this morning. That said, quite often he just does not want the attention of journalists and reporters around him when he's got to focus on the task at hand. A winner here previously, of course, in 2009. And I guess the course has come to Mark Cavendish as well as to others of the quick men because of its amendments with the Pompiana and Le Mani being struck out of this race. It was last year that they were supposed to feature, but landslides, and the road's still not repaired, so they're not back in yet. As you can see, it's party time at the arrival. Got some link problems just for the time being, but we're doing our best to patch them back together on a day where the wind is blowing. Now, that tailwind that we will have, it looks reasonably calm in the protected zone right at the end, as you can see, but it does blow just a little bit, and off the final descent, I suspect it may well be something of an advantage. And if it is a small group that have managed to disengage themselves from the pack late on, it could help.
Yeah, it's certainly be in favour of riders such as Fabian Cancellara, who's been so successful in this race over the years. He's only won it once, but he's never been outside the top 3 in the last 4 occasions and 4 runnings of this race. He'll be looking to, of course, go 1 or 2 better today, and as you said, that tailwind will help him, and so too will the change of the finish here to the Via Roma, which we haven't seen since 2007. It's only slightly closer to the foot of the last descent of the Poggio, but that little bit just under 1 kilometre could make all the difference to a breakaway group because they won't be looking at each other so much, and there's less time to be looking around and get caught before they reach the finish line.
Here's a scary thing. We've got just under 100 kilometres to go, and they've already been in the saddle for over 4.5 hours. That, Dan, has got to hurt, and that's why they try and keep so much in the bank early on, although the pace today has been a high one.
It has been high. They averaged 44.4 k's per hour in the first hour, and it hasn't gone down particularly much since then. 4 hours into this race, they'd averaged 42, so it has been reasonably quick, although, of course, they are quite quick roads that they start out on from Milano. It's going to be a very, very interesting race. It always is. We never know what's going to happen until the very final moment. It could be a small group coming into the finish. We've seen that in recent years. It could be a large group like we had last year, despite the weather conditions. Not quite as bad, the weather conditions, as they were last year or the year before. But still, if you look at the way the peloton and the breakaway riders are really wrapped up, you can see that it is still very cold out there. Although at the finish, it's not too bad. The road's still wet, but it hasn't been raining for the last couple of hours, and temperature's not too bad here at the finish.
We have got just a little bit of brightness nudging its way through, and so while we wait for our pictures to get patched back to you and we re-establish the link, I think it's possibly worth just going through and talking about some of the favourites. Defending champion Alexander Kristoff, can he repeat the feat? It would be an amazing thing if he did. Well,
he certainly seems to have the form to do so. Started off the season incredibly well up in the tours of Qatar and Oman in the Middle East. Went to Paris-Nice as his last preparatory race before this one. Won a stage there and actually was going very well up the Col d'Ez on the final day's uphill time trial. He finished inside the top 40, which for a sprinter and a big man is certainly not bad on an uphill time trial. So he's kind of started out as equal favourite today. roughly with Peter Sagan. Sagan, of course, has never won this race. He came close the year that Ciolek won it. So he'll also be looking to try and add his first monument to his palmares. But there's so many riders who can possibly win this race. We're going to go through all of them for you over the next, well, let's say 50 kilometres before we reach that crunch point towards the end of the race.
Team strategy sometimes is a very difficult thing to actually sort out until later in the race. We spoke to Gerald Ciolek at the top of the day, former winner, of course, and they've got so many options with him. MTN Quebec, I know a number of you watching in from South Africa. Edvald Bosenhagen, of course, Matt Goss, former winner. They have a lot of talent, a lot of driving ambition as well. Steve Cummings is in there along with Christian Spragley, who can't be ruled out, and Janse van Rensburg, likewise. Proper team. Likewise, you've got to say Mark Cavendish's team. They've got the Kwiatkowski option. What an option that is if Mark Cavendish is not functioning at the highest. And the way that Zdenek Zdibar has been going, the Czech champion, he's absolutely on fire at the moment. So Ethics Quickstep have got a terrifically rounded team to go on the attack. Greipel. Now, big question about the distance for Andre Greipel. He doesn't really like huge long distances, but doesn't mind a climb, doesn't mind the wet. He locked up last year after they took the Pompeana and Lamani out due to that landslide. Still no repairs to those peaks or the roads around them, so it remains one for the pure sprinters. But it was a late call for Andre Greipel, hugely late decision. I think he only really decided to come about 5 days, would you believe, before the event itself. Well, he's back and looked nice and relaxed today with his rather wide mouth, turning up at the edges.
Yeah, he's taken a lot of confidence, I think, from last year, despite the fact that he wasn't actually able to sprint because he cramped up in the final 3 kilometres. Just the fact that he managed to get over the Cipressa and Poggio in that front group of 30, I think for him was kind of a small victory, and said to himself, I can do this, and if I can just get to the finish slightly fresher next year, unleash my sprint, then he'd definitely be one of the favourites. But Lotto Soudal, the Belgian squad, again, another team who, should Andre Greipel not be on the top of his form at the end of the race today, they can count on a few other riders. They've got Chris Bookmans, who's a very good sprinter in his own right. He's won a couple of races recently, including Le Samin, where he outdid the entire Ethics Quickstep squad at the finish pretty much. And they've also got 2 attacking riders, Tony Galopin, who was performing incredibly well in the recent Paris-Nice. In fact, was in the yellow jersey going into the final day's time trial. And the young revelation, really, from last year, Tim Wellens, winner of the Eneco Tour in August last year. He's also an incredible talent, a man I see winning lots of different types of races in the next and the forthcoming years. So they've got those 2 cards to play as well. Ethics is a very, very interesting one today because in general, of course, we've got 2 types of teams. Those who've got a sprinter who wants to try and keep everybody around their sprinter as long as possible and keep the pace steady. And those with attacking climbers, the likes of Trek Factory Racing with Fabien Cancellara, for example, who would like a very, very fast race. Ethics are kind of in the middle, aren't they? They've got those riders who can go on the attack, who would prefer, if they were the sole team leaders, to have a very hard race in a small group coming towards the finish. But they've also got Cavendish, a previous winner, the only winner in that team of Milan-San Remo in the past, who would, of course, like it to be slightly steadier and a slightly bigger group coming towards the finish for him to have a chance of winning. So they're going to have to be honest with each other, the riders within the Ethics squad. If Cav's not feeling on a good day, then he's going to have to say to Kwiatkowski and Stibar and his other teammates, look, you're free to go on the attack. And it's going to be interesting to see how that team plays things out over the final 30 Ks.
It's going to feel like a long drag for a lot of riders here, but they have to, as we said, keep something in the bank and maybe just sacrifice themselves for their teammates. If you look at the bookmakers' prices ahead of today, you'll see a lot of very, very good riders with very, very long odds. It's such a difficult one to pick because of the talent pool that we have here, and you never quite know how the race is going to pan out, whether it is going to be one that's taken by a breakaway rider. A lone victory is a hard thing to achieve here, or it has been in the past, of late, I should say. However, this, they say, is the easiest race since 2007, and we're expecting it to be a bunch at the end. That's not going to stop the likes of Philippe Gilbert, former world champion, Sylvain Chavanel having a go for it for IM Cycling. Greg van Avermaet as a good foil for Gilbert for BMC Racing. There are others down here who can go very long. How will Edvald Bosenhagen do for NTN Quebec today?
Well, certainly his Norwegian coach thinks that he's got a very good chance of winning today. He's another rider who won't mind this weather, the fact that it's cold and wet. He's very much used to it from training back in Norway over the winter for many, many years now, since he started his pro career. So yeah, they do have many options at MTN Quebec. Another interesting squad is Movistar, the Spanish, the only Spanish World Tour team left in the peloton here in 2015. They've got Valverde. Now, you can never count that man out, of course. He's quite a late entry into this race. We only really found out that he was doing it for sure just around 1 week ago. He's another guy, actually, who didn't do Paris-Nice or Tirreno Adriatico. And the same can be said for his teammate, Juan Jose Lobato. He skipped both Paris-Nice and Tirreno Adriatico. Didn't go to either of them just because he felt like his form was so good that he didn't want to tip it over the edge. So he's been at home training very, very hard. He was fourth last year, which was a little bit of a surprise. He'd kind of come on the scene in his first year with Movistar, but a great ride there. And I think he's been dreaming about this race ever since, thinking about it when he's out training. And he's certainly done some big rides over the last couple of weeks in preparation. And as last year proved, despite being Spanish, he's another rider who copes well with some pretty torrid weather conditions.
Daniel Weiss of BMC, a team that's enjoyed quite a good top to the season, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, they've had a good couple of years, actually. Remember back in 2013, there were a few critics of the BMC squad. A team with a lot of money, a team which took some big name riders on big contracts and multiple seasons who didn't perhaps perform as well as they had done before they got those contracts. But they've really kind of turned things around about 18 months ago. Once Alan Piper, the Australian manager, came over from Garmin and took over the management role at BMC, they've really got their act together. Everything's been going reasonably well for them, and as you said, they've had a great start to the season. Cadel Evans finishing on the podium on his last World Tour race, the Tour Down Under, and actually teammate Rowan Dennis winning that race, winning a stage along the way, and then taking the world hour record. Guys to watch here for that team, as you've said, Carlton, Greg van Avermaet, who won a stage of Tirreno Adriatico in front of Peter Sagan, and of course Philippe Gilbert, a man we don't talk about quite so much these days as we would have done 3 or 4 years ago, but again, another guy who can't be counted out. If he's on good form up the Cipressa and Poggio, we could certainly see him going on the attack.
Philippe Gilbert avowing that this is his top target for the season. So full stop for Philippe Gilbert in terms of ambition with this race. I'm sure there'll be others as well for him to shine in, but he really is making this a big target. So expect an attack off the Poggio. Let's briefly just talk about what they have to deal with in terms of terrain down. At the moment, we're very much on the coastal reaches in this part of the world. The road will kick up, not quite as dramatically as it has in the past, but we're about to start this rather unkind series of lumps and bumps. That's the only way I can really describe it. The capos, so the little capes that dot the side of the coast, the sort of place you might pull up and just enjoy the view. These guys are going to be sailing past them. Capo Meli comes with 57 kilometres to go, so in about 30 k's time, reasonably flat until that point. And then in very quick succession, the Capo Cervo, the Capo Berta, before we have that 16-kilometre hiatus ahead of the Cipressa and of course the Poggio. It does get very lumpy all of a sudden, doesn't it?
Yeah, they're not huge climbs by any means. You only have to take a quick look at the profile on the Gazzetta website to see that they don't really go up too much into the sky. The Cipressa goes up to 239 metres from just above sea level. So taken on their own, they're reasonably easy. The percentage gradient's not ridiculous either. It's about 5%, I think, for the Cipressa, perhaps slightly less, actually. But that means that they're incredibly fast. I think some of the record speeds from races in the slightly more dubious era of the 90s were something like 36 k's per hour average up the climb of the Cipressa and the Poggio, which quite frankly was ridiculous. But even nowadays, they do go up there very, very fast indeed. I think the record actually on Strava for the Poggio is from a guy called Niccolo Bonifacio, who's racing here with Lampre. Now, he didn't set that time in a race. He's never done this race before. He lives locally, and he's beaten some of the riders in terms of time up there who have done this race and have uploaded their GPS files to Strava. So that's an interesting one. He took a win recently. I think it was in Grand Prix Lugano, a reasonably hilly classic one-day race. And he's another guy to possibly watch out for, but it does seem like he's going to have to work for the two team leaders. Number one, Pipo Pozzato, who won this race many years ago. And secondly, Chimolai, who won a stage of Paris-Nice very recently, is another guy on some great form.
They've also got Rui Costa, of course, within that team. Pozzato winning in 2006, and it was a lone victory then. Can't see that happening this time by, although the likes of Cancellara, of course, and Chabanel and Philippe Gilbert will be hoping that they can basically prove that to be wrong. Lovely coastal road, this. A very difficult one to take on when the road is open because it's extraordinarily busy. It's a beautiful part of the world, and so everyone wants to see it, and most of those tend to be in motor cars. However, these guys are having their fun today. It's a long, long line, as you can see, and that's kind of gives away the fact that we are at pace as we speak. Milan-San Remo, it is a fabulous title. Mark Cavendish was as happy as I've ever seen him when he first took this. It was a great thing to put on his palmares, and he wants it again.
Yeah, he certainly does. It was very emotional for him, in fact, when he won it. It's an incredible finish, and everyone that ever gets the chance to have a quick look at it on YouTube or on a DVD or whatever. My teammate at the time, Heinrich Hausler, went with around about 400 metres to go, claiming that he was leading out Torushoft, but it was quite an attack. And looked like he had it in the bag, but Mark Cavendish was absolutely on the best form possibly I've ever seen in terms of his sprint. He launched himself. And if you have a look actually at some still pictures of when he wins that race in San Remo by a tyre's width from Heinrich Hausler, who he only just caught, the distance behind Torushoft, who came third, is incredible. When you think that they were all together with 400, 350 metres to go, he put lengths and lengths and more lengths into the some of the best sprinters and classics riders in the world at that time. It was an incredible victory. It did mean a huge amount to him. Nobody thought he could do it. He played down his chances. He did say that he was, you know, faking that his climbing was not very good at Tirreno Adriatico, but that was a race where I was in, which I was in. And unless he's a very good actor when it comes to heavy breathing on climbs, I don't think he was faking it. But don't tell him that I said that.
We'll keep that secret. Nonetheless, Mark Cavendish has had a bit of a tummy upset. He's been blowing candles out by accident from the wrong end for some time. It does weaken you if you have that kind of problem. It neutralised his challenge within the Tirreno Adriatico, and I'm fearful for Mark, but then again, he is a man who can rise to an occasion, and when there's a bit of history involved, you never know. Let's talk about Orica Green Edge. Michael Matthews. Now, he had fun on the Paris-Nice. He's back on form, which is great to see. Can Bling do his thing?
I think he can, but then I think there's a lot of riders who can. Interesting, actually, to talk about the Australians, because they've been so successful here over the last 5 years. They had both Simon Gerrans and Matt Goss winning this race in the last 5 years or so. Simon Gerrans not here today. He's had a horrid start to the season. I think he broke his collarbone either in January or December in a mountain bike training accident, and then just as he came back into competition at the Strada Bianca a couple of weeks ago, he crashed, and I think he fractured his wrist there, so he's delaying his season yet again until the Basque Country in April, I believe. So it's going to be difficult for him even to get into form for his beloved Ardennes Classics, which come in the latter part of April. But yeah, Matt Goss is in this race, as we said before. He's a part of the MTN Quebecer squad, of course racing for that very good charity Quebecer over in Africa, which supplies bikes to underprivileged children so they can get to school quicker or just get to school in the first place. And they're trying to raise enough money here to buy 293 bikes, which is how many kilometres this race is. So well worth a look if you get a chance to go onto the Quebecer charity website. But yeah, the Australians so successful here. Going back to Michael Matthews, definitely he has a chance. He's another guy kind of in the mould of John Degenkolb, really, who can climb incredibly well. Some of you might remember that Giro stage that he won last year. I don't remember the climb that it was, but there was a huge crash at the bottom. It was a punchy climb. You know, there was 5 or 6 guys left at the top, including the likes of Evans and some of the other GC riders. Matthews was still there. He won it easily in the sprint, but he can also win from big groups as well. So he's got all the qualities that you need for a race like this. Hasn't got much experience at all in the race, but that hasn't stopped riders in the past. In fact, there's some interesting statistics, Carlton, who came from my good friend Killian Kelly, Mr. Stats himself. He's been looking into riders who've done this race and won it, who've ridden Paris-Nice beforehand, ridden Tirreno Adriatico beforehand, or not ridden either. And it makes for some interesting bar graphs. So yes. Most of the time over the last 15, 20 years, it's been a rider who's come out of Tirreno Adriatico. Very rarely has it been a guy who's not raced either of those stage races, which doesn't bode well, I guess, for Valverde and Lobato, etc. But also it looked at which was the hardest classic, and to back up his thoughts, he had a look at how many riders had won the race who'd never won it before. That's Paris-Roubaix, Tour of Flanders, Amstel Gold Liège, and this one here, of course, Milan-San Remo. And actually, quite a few riders who've never done this race before have won it on the first time they participated, including Mark Cavendish. So, you know, that's perhaps not going to be the downfall of Michael Matthews today. I believe he does know the course very well. He's said in interviews that he's ridden the Poggio over 100 times. So, who knows? I think it could well be his day. But as I keep saying, there's so many favourites who could do well and could win today's race.
Well, I'll let you into a secret. Dan Lloyd badged up Lobato in his mind last November, and he had a little wager. So if Lobato is coming into the line and looking likely winner, expect Dan to sort of go a bit alto. There is Mark Cavendish. Don't read anything into that visage just for the time being. Of course, everyone suffers today. He has got that little nasal expanding strip upon his nose. Not quite sure what that's about. Haven't really seen that being utilised in the past. But look at the breakers just rolling in. That tells you that the storm's out there, and we are heading for a big one where the talent will just whip itself up into a heck of a cyclone, and then they all come to the line. Dan, they have shortened the flat section off the final climb today. So once they're off the Poggio, they've got 1 kilometre less before they hit the line on the flat stuff. Is that going to open it up for a breakaway, or some of the big punchers late on to go on the attack? Or all the team's going to be well versed on what they've got to do to manage that situation?
It could do. It could be a group of 3. When Simon Gerrans won it, of course, it was just the 3 of them. And I think just looking at the composition of that trio just goes to show you what a great race this is, because 3 completely different types of riders. Simon Gerrans ultimately winning it, a guy who can do very well in lots of the hilly one-day races like Liège, which he won, etc., etc. Fabian Cancellara, who goes very well, of course, in the cobbled classics, one of the most successful riders of all time in the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. And Vincenzo Nibali, who's won all 3 of the Grand Tours. Those 3 came to the line together. First was Gerrans, then Cancellara, and then Nibali. So that just goes to show you how well suited this race is to all kinds of riders. Going back to what you were saying though, that shortening between the foot of the Poggio and the finish line here on the Via Roma, it could still go either way. We've seen big groups coming into the Via Roma before. We've also seen Pozzato just coming in just in front of a group on his own, so it really could go any way. I think the fact roads are wet and slippery could play into the hands of a smaller group if they do manage to get over the Poggio and down the other side, but I really can't wait for them to hit these big climbs. I'm really looking forward to today's race.
First of the rolling climbs will be with us with 57 kilometres to go, so we're approaching that kind of preamble, if you like. Don't think anyone's going to be teeing themselves up for glory just yet, but it is a fascinating one today. Thank you so much for joining us around the world. It's great to hear from you. If you'd like to join the conversation, by the way, please feel free to do so. It is at Carlton Kirby, or indeed at Daniel Lloyd 1, DANIELLLOYD, and then the number 1. And we will revel in your thoughts and indeed your questions along the way. So it is almost anybody's call today. There are potentially 40 riders who could win this, and some would say possibly anyone from the entire peloton. A lot of talent has been drawn in, and you're extraordinarily welcome to be joining us here. Just under 75 kilometres to go. We have a breakaway. It's 11 brave souls, and I think you've got to be on a day like this. Colombia's Molano, by the way, only 20 years of age, and he's suddenly started imposing himself. The Colombian's gone to Langkawi and top 10 on 3 occasions there, and in fact finished 4th. And as a neo-pro, that's a bit loud, and we like that. So Colombia, all right, the weather was an awful lot better, and they haven't been shining terribly brightly in the dull conditions. Likewise, Christoph just blowing out his cheeks saying, no, I'm not overly happy. But then again, as defending champion, I guess he wants to make himself as anonymous as he possibly can. You can never count Pirazzi out, albeit a very, very long shot on a day like this with the talent that we've got. But he has made the breakaway count before.
Yeah, he's taken a stage win at the Giro d'Italia from a breakaway last year. He's got those old school shades on. That was good timing, wasn't it? Just as we were talking about, and he comes up on our screen. Out of the breakaway, I think possibly the strongest rider could be the veteran Martin Cialinghi from the Lotto Jumbo team. He was in the breakaway, of course, last year and survived a long, long way into the finish, actually towards the finish. Got swept up, I think, on the Poggio, if my memory serves me correctly. He's a very experienced guy. He's predominantly a domestique these days, riding for his team's sprinters and his team's climbers in the Grand Tours. But he's formerly won some fairly big races, including the Tour of Belgium, where I think at one of the stages he basically rode away from a peloton which was led by Quick Step, as it was known at the time, and they never saw him again. 4 or 5 guys working on the front, couldn't better Cialinghi, and you know, at 37 years of age, you've got that extra endurance in your legs, and when the going gets really tough and the weather's bad like it is today, that plays into your favour.
Jan Bart is in the break for Bora Aragon, who was 4th in the Dwars d'Ors, West Flanders. Adrian Kurek is here as well. Runner-up in Einan, which is not a bad race for CCC Sprani Polkovici. I think they'll be working for Gregor Boller, the aforementioned Slovenian, today nonetheless. Sebastian Molano of Colombia, he's that 20-year-old who went very well in Langkawi, and we occasionally do get breakout performances here by youngsters, don't forget. And so I don't think it's going to happen for him, but he's shining well to have got in the break, and not quite sure who Colombia are going to be rolling for today, to be honest. Maybe Rubiana, but it's all a long shot for the Colombians. We have Matteo Bono as well from Lampre Merida in the break. Pippo Pozzato, of course, is their choice. But as Dan said, Bonifacio is a local lad here. I think in this company, it would be a huge long shot for him to crack it, but apparently he lives at the bottom of the Cipressa. I thought it was actually at the bottom of the Poggio, but he lives at the bottom of the Cipressa, so he kind of knows the terrain, and local knowledge counts for an awful lot when it comes to well, just the weather and you're rolling, your attack points, all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
and it's in particular the timing of your positioning, because everybody wants to reach the Poggio and the Cipressa before it's in a really good position, which ideally means top 15. But at that point, we'll probably still have well over 100 rides in the peloton. So with everybody wanting to be in the top 15, it makes it particularly hectic. And you can't just maintain that position in the top 15. It's a constantly rolling peloton. If you look at it from the overhead shots, you'll see that it's always rotating, and it's very difficult actually to position yourself well at just the right time. And local knowledge and knowing where the road turns right and left and where the foot of the climb is, exactly like Bonifacio will do, can play to your advantage.
Time for Dan to go and get the coffees, and it looks like a little bit of sustenance being taken on by the pack as well. The Wombat, hello mate, says, would Orica Greenedge possibly give Yates license on the final climb as a decoy stroke alternative option to Bling? Yeah, why not? More than capable. Turbo Durbo's here, of course. Luke Durbridge, along with Darryl Impey, who will be working for Michael Matthews or Bling. Go Bling, says Phil Walker. I wonder whether anyone will risk a fast descent on the Poggio. Well, you can be absolutely certain that Philippe Gilbert is going to try along. It's the only way he's likely to win. Cancellara likewise, and expects Sylvain Chavanel, I think, to be the man who lights up the spark first. Once that touch paper is fizzing, everyone else is going to try and join the party. There's so much to go for today. and indeed so much at stake, as you well know. Thanks to Graham Miller, Who's Your Madness from the United States, and the rest of you. You're rocking, and we'll have plenty of those calls for you in a wee while. Apparently there is warm tea and honey being handed out to MTN Quebec. There we are. That's probably Brian Smith, their general manager, who likes a bit of warm tea himself. Alternatives in there, apparently, in terms of snacks. Something just to cheer the heart on a grizzly day. And after nearly 5 hours and 20 minutes in the saddle, you need all the cheer you can get. It's down to 3.5 minutes. The break now. And as you can see, the road surface, I guess the one good thing, Dan, about the road surface is that we've had a lot of heavy rain, so at least it has been washed clean and grip levels won't be too bad, even though it's still damp.
Not too bad, but that's the big thing here on the Italian roads, is that they often like ice. As you said, it's good that it's been raining a fair bit. We saw in Bari last year on stage 4 of the Giro d'Italia after we'd come over from Ireland. That finishing circuit, I mean, as I said, it is really like ice sometimes on Italian roads when the rain has been falling. Today shouldn't be too bad. It's something the riders are getting used to, really, with the conditions that they've experienced here in Milan-San Remo for the last few years. So, yeah, I'm sure they'll all be able to deal with it. Hopefully they'll stay safe. A lot of this race can come down to the descent and your descending ability as well. You know, if you're in the front, if you've got a small gap to a group behind, then you want to press on and maintain or increase that gap. And of course, if you're behind, you want to close it. So risks will be taken, and those risks are magnified slightly when the roads are wet.
Wes Haley said, when did break last survive the Milan-San Remo? I'd like this lot to stay away, but I'm not holding my breath. Well, it depends when your breaks form, I guess. From the top of the day, not so sure, but Pozzato was the last lone winner in 2006.
Yeah, just about. He just about held off Pataki, I think it was, in second. And I think if you see the finish photos, you can see his teammate Tom Bonen there towards the front of the race as well. Here is our world champion, Michał Kwiatkowski, a guy that not too many people have actually been talking about for today's race. Which I guess could really play into his hands. It was the same situation last year at the World Championships, which, of course, he won, resplendent there in the rainbow jersey. And I guess that is the advantage of having such a huge name like Mark Cavendish in your ranks, is that everybody's focus is on the guy who's won it before, the guy who's won more races than anybody else in this peloton. So it could be that if Cav's not on a great day and those two guys, Kwiatkowski and Stybar, do get free rein at the end, that they could spring a surprise. He's got all the qualities for this race. He's a good climber, but especially on the punchy climbs like we get at the end today. He's not got a bad sprint from a small group, and he's a fantastic descender, so you certainly wouldn't rule out the world champion. It's been a long time, I think, since the world champion has won this race in the rainbow jersey, so that would be an amazing thing to see.
Would be lovely. 62.4 kilometres left. It's holding at the moment. I guess that's due respect being given, but also don't want to give too much away. Just over 3.5 minutes. They're coming to these little outcrops, these capos. The road's just cut inland ever so slightly as we've gone to some of the towns. They often, traditionally at least, before they started thinking about tourism and that sort of thing, kept themselves away directly from the front line of the ocean. It was really only the poor men in the smaller houses, the fishermen, who actually took the real punishment from the weather. Of course, things have changed these days, but some of the older towns just set away from the winds and, of course, the sea spray just a little bit. So we've cut into Albania, you're looking at right now. And then once they're out, we'll be hitting our first capo. And it won't be too long before we get there, Dan. 57 kilometres out, we peak over the melee. So it'll be on us before you know it.
Yeah, a couple of very small rollers, but it is the point at which the teams that want to hurt the sprinters will begin to increase the pace on the front and try and hurt the legs of the quick men. And then it's really kind of quick succession almost, isn't it? We've got those very small capos there before they then eventually lead to the Cipressa, which comes in the last 30 Ks. That's the first really key moment. That's the first point at which I think we'll see attacks from some big name riders. Nibali went, of course, there last year, but unfortunately ended up on his own. And it's a reasonable way when you're on your own between the foot of the Cipressa and the start of the Poggio. And it was a big effort for him, and he paid for that. He got caught not long after they started climbing the Poggio. So if he does go on the attack again today, or riders with similar strengths and capabilities, they'll hope for 2, 3, maybe 4 riders to join them, so that they've got more of a chance of staying away. And of course, at that point in the race, a lot of the scenarios come down to how many teammates the sprinters have still got left with them between the Cipressa and the Poggio, and again, down the other side even from the Poggio, even though it's only a couple of Ks from the foot of the descent. If you haven't got any teammates, or if you've got nobody to do the work, then somebody can slip up the road and everybody looks at each other. There's no one to do the chasing and really lay it all on the line for somebody else. And we've been saying it, we say it every year, we've been saying it all day today. There's so many scenarios, there's so many possible winners of the race, but that's what makes it so fantastic.
The break is working reasonably well together. We've seen a few sort of little bit of concertinaing going on amongst them, as they've themselves have also been derobing. But you can see from the sharpness of the shadows that all of a sudden they've got a little pool of sunshine, which is nice. We have had some particularly bad weather on the early season races from Italy over the last couple of years now, and it was a little bit of a downhearted view this morning when we looked out and saw that the rain was actually still with us, but it is drying. I think this is going to be one of the most clement finishes we've had for a while. Yeah,
they have had some torrid conditions in Italy the last couple of years, not just in the spring here, but also for the Giro d'Italia. There's been some very, very hard races in terms of weather conditions. As I said, they got very used to it, the riders doing Milan-San Remo. It's a shame, really. It's sunny so much of the time here in this seaside town. For it to be raining on 3 years consecutively on the day of the race is quite incredible. There's a team we haven't really mentioned too much yet, the Bora Argon 18 squad, formerly known as Team NetApp Enduro the last few years. They've got Sam Bennett in their ranks. Now, those of you from Ireland will be cheering him on, no doubt. He's a rider who's a possible winner of this race, if not today, certainly in the future. He's not got some bad climbing skills, and we saw that in the Caerphilly stage of the Tour of Britain a couple of years ago when he was riding for the Ampost team. And of course, a very, very fast finish as well. He won the last stage of the Tour of Qatar a few weeks ago in front of some very big name sprinters. So it actually wouldn't be a surprise to see him manage to get over the Cipressa and Poggio, but he's still young. He's never done this race before, so there's still plenty of time for Sam to gain that experience and strength which you need to win this race.
They just passed the Capomelle. That was the pack that is at the moment. 3 minutes and 21 is the gap. Next little turn out at modest altitude with a view of the ocean comes in about 10 k's time. So, would you at this juncture care to have an early roll of the dice, young Dan Lloyd?
Oh, Lobato all the way.
Dan's been on Lobato at 201 since last November. So yes, if you've been following Dan Lloyd on Twitter, then continue to do so. He gives you some good long-range tips. He's very much shortened today. What did he start at, do you know?
20.
There we are. 20 to 1 is just about an out-and-out favourite for this race. I think you can get, I think, wasn't Mark Cavendish sort of down towards 10s, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think out-and-out favourite was kind of equally divided amongst Peter Sagan and Alexander Kristoff, then Mark Cavendish just below them. John Degenkolb, of course, right up there as well, as is Michael Matthews. His odds shortening a lot after some great performances in Paris-Nice. And I think also due to the structure almost of the Orica Green Edge team. It's very much a team which is built around Matthews, which shows that he's confident, it shows the team's confident, and as I said earlier, it's certainly a race which suits him down to the ground.
You can see as well from the flare of the reflected light that the roads are still very, very wet, but as we said earlier on, clean of diesel particles. Cars do contain filters these days, and they do burn cleaner, but in some of the agricultural areas you still get a lot of debris deposits, those microparticles from diesel, and it makes it for a very, very slippy surface. I have to say, having looked and walked up the finish line here, not too much street furniture for them to deal with, but at the end we've got some nasty, nasty turns. Yeah, we've got a couple of turns to deal with just inside the final kilometre. It's kind of a left-right in very quick succession. So after that, they've got around 750 metres of straight down the Via Roma here to the finish. So those are going to be the last kind of key point in this race, and then less than a minute later we're going to find out the winner of the 2015 edition. Debbie Hill says, surprise, surprise to hear you guys on SBS. We've been in before and love the platform. She says, feel at home. Come on, dribbling Matthews. Seems Matthews is the big call from down under. Any other options?
From down under? Well, Simon Clark, his teammate, if Matthews is not feeling good or if something unfortunate happens to him in terms of crashes or mechanicals, etc. I think, again, Simon's a very good rider. He's an attacking rider. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him right up there. I think first and foremost, his job will be to stay at the side of Michael Matthews and try and make sure that nothing untoward does happen to him as they approach the Cipressa and Poggio.
Just to give you a bit of background on Matt Goss, he's extraordinarily relaxed. I was on the MTN Quebecer team bus at the Tirreno, and Gossi just seems very, very much at peace with himself. You know, he's had a fantastic record, but I just feel that there's a little fire still burning in his belly. And, you know, don't expect Gossi to be anonymous.
Yeah, he's a bike racer. He wants to win bike races and do well in them, and he hasn't been able to do that the last couple of years. He's transferred over from that Orica Green Edge squad, where he was very, very well paid after a successful few seasons before joining them. And now it's kind of a crunch year for him, I would say. You know, it can help you going over to a different team. We saw that with the Cervelo Test team back in 2009. Yes, they had Carlos Sastre, who'd won the Tour de France. Yes, they had Thor Hushoff, but the rest of the squad was kind of made up of guys who had been successful in the past, but had lost their way just slightly, and it kind of all came together for them, and they were all very motivated, all worked very well together, and they had an enormous amount of success. And MTN Quebecer could very much be like that. Of course, they've already had enormous success winning this race a couple of years ago. I mean, they just couldn't have believed that it happened. I can't imagine team manager Doug Ryder must have been jumping up and down for days after they won it here in 2013. But they've got a huge chance again this year, and I think, as I said, just spreading that load of responsibility amongst quite a number of big name riders, and in particular sprinters who can climb pretty well as well, could well work for them.
We'll see. Well, wind report. Basically, it's from the string hanging outside of the commentary position. If it's swinging, then we've got a breeze. If it's horizontal, we've got high wind. Right now, it's sort of slightly damp and moving. But I am looking out to sea, and it looks like the wind has picked up. We're talking about a tailwind today. Late charge from the likes of Gilbert. He's definitely going to do it. It's just a question of when and how, the level of efficacy, I guess. Just how effective will he actually be? Tailwind will help in that regard, though.
Yeah, it just enables you to have a better chance of staying clear. It also means that you don't have to leave your sprint quite so late from a group or a slightly larger peloton. You can go with, let's say, over 200 metres to go. If it's a headwind and everybody's tired, then trying to save it to the last 150 metres is really what you need to do. Here's the breakaway then, just starting these little foothills almost as they come towards the Cipressa and Poggio. So you can see the speed of the peloton really has started to increase now. More and more teams sending their domestiques and riders towards the front to get their guys into good position. Again, it's about saving energy. It's about getting to these climbs towards the front and not getting into that long line of riders towards the back, where it is much, much harder. There's much more of a change of pace. So this is just going to increase, get faster and faster and faster now all the way to the finish. And as I said that, here are Tinkoff Saxo and Team Sky just coming to the fore. Now, first we've really seen of Team Sky. I understand that they're putting all of their eggs into the Ben Swift baskets for today's race. Third here last year. They've got Geraint Thomas, they've got Ian Stannard. It's a quality lineup for the men in black and blue there on the right-hand side.
I was just about to say that Peter Sagan is not a man who is afraid to burn his teammates. He'll call for action early. That's precisely what he's got right now. It will be part of their battle plan. He doesn't like, frankly, functioning within a train. He'd much rather be in a punch-up situation and hop on and off other people's lead-ins. He doesn't want the confusion of having teammates around him, quite frankly, and he's not afraid to burn them early, and that's precisely what he's doing at the moment. Tinkoff Saxo have been called by Peter Sagan to get on with it. With 51.9 kilometres to go, the gap now is 2 minutes and 45. So Breschel, Kreuziger, they are all working hard. Boara, Bernati, and look at the pace back here. This means business.
Yeah, here's Andy Fenn on the front. He made the move over from Ethics Quick Step last year to Sky this year. He's setting the early pace if you can call 5.5 hours into the race, the early pace. Just trying to lead his teammates. You can see in the background there, we've got Geraint Thomas. Just behind Andrew Fenn here is the Welshman Luke Rowe, who's also been riding very, very well so far this season. But yeah, of course, it's positioning at this point in time. But Tinkoff Saxo are another team with Sagan who would like to make this race as hard as possible for the other sprinters because he's probably the best climber out of all of them.
Ben Sartori says there'll be happy faces here in Oz if Hausler could pull off after getting mugged by Cavendish in the past. Well, it would be something. Runner-up in 2009, Henrik Hausler. But Sylvain Chavanel is possibly their man for the late push. But don't count Hausler out. He's not done yet. No, he's been going very well this season. Of course, he beat some very good riders at the Australian National Championships. Not least, should I say, Caleb Ewan. Who is kind of a revelation of Australian cycling at the moment. So you can never count him out. And although my bank balance would most like to see Lobato cross the line first, my heart would like to see Heinrich Hausler cross the line first more than any other rider. He's dreamt of this race for years. He came so close back in 2009, really just a tyre's width. He thought he'd won it. It was heartbreaking for him at the time. And time's running out for him, I guess. But that would be incredible. Oh, there's been a slight crash in the... That's why you want to be at the front of the peloton. Good call, but by the teams that have gone up front. Quick bike change for one of the Katusha riders. Couldn't quite get an ID on it, but just a bit of a ragtag involved with, as all the camera bikes also back up. Not really a point where you'd expect a pinch and an incident to happen, but any kind of compression, when you get this pace change down and any alteration in the road, quite often those at the back do just find themselves in trouble. Well, these are exactly the moments that I was talking about in terms of saving energy. That just being towards the front means that you're out of this possible danger most of the time of crashes further down. Just look to the left-hand side of your screens right now. You can see the Katusha ride just went slightly too far to the left. He clipped something on the barrier there. Not sure exactly what happened, but all of those guys that have slowed down just behind the crash, they've got to use that little bit of extra energy to get back to the peloton and then try and move up. And it might not seem like much, but it all adds up over the course of a 7-hour race, and it's exactly what you don't want. Well, it's good morning coffee for Huzia over in the United States. Meanwhile, it's hot tea and honey elsewhere. A lot of you filling us in on your... how you're keeping awake or indeed waking up. Cycling Direct says tailwind. We're back to talking about Mark Cavendish. Cav will be there. It's just how effective he will be. Oh, well, has anyone recorded that out then? Let's get it on a loop if he's not. Yeah, well, I say these things to get beaten up with them later on. 48.7, 2 minutes and 11. This has really fallen down. They've trimmed out, what, 30 seconds and more. That clock really continues to count down as the transponders pick up the deficit, and the charge is on, Dan. Well, yeah, it's that increase of pace from all of the teams that want to keep their riders towards the front. It's almost by the by, really, trying to chase this breakdown. At this point, it's all about either trying to make the race hard for some of the teams or just simply getting your riders into position. And the pace naturally goes up towards the back end of all of the a classic like Milan-San Remo. It will continue to go up, and the rate they're going at the moment, the breakaway could be all but over by the time they reach halfway up the Cipressa. There's Greipel bouncing around on the pedals in the white kit as German champion. His teammates all around him. This another one again of the foothills, which will lead them towards the Cipressa. So more tiring of the legs, I think you might say, at this point in the race. I think that's the point. That's the point, isn't it? There are these punches and counter punches before we get to the last couple of tests. They may not be the biggest climbs in the world, and in fact, if you rode them, even as a club rider, you probably get a decent time up them. But in this sort of company, and coming when they do after such a long time in the saddle, 293 kilometres, we remind you, so they will have done about 270 before they even get to those last two climbs. It's about endurance as well as sprinting at the end. Capocervo you're looking at right now, probably one of the most beautiful pictures you're likely to see today. It's got that little citadel high up on the peak where the monastery, the old What am I trying to say? It's where the monks trained in this part of the world. It'll come back to me in a few moments' time. Yes, so a lot of contemplation has gone on in this part of the world for an awful long time. But the gap right now is down to under 2 minutes. And as a result, we're contemplating a big fireworks finish. I think it's going to end in a mass sprint.
Do you? Wow, there's a couple of bold predictions you made already.
Yeah, you haven't done any.
No, because I don't want to get shot down in flames at the end.
That's why I'm here. I'll just pitch him up, you knock him out in the park. 44.3, little less than that now to go, and under 2 minutes. Wow. They're just shrouded for the moment from their view of the sea, and it gets a little bit less pretty from now on in. In fact, there are some sort of business-like areas along the coast that aren't quite as beautiful as you might think. San Remo itself is a lovely part of the world. We're staying in a very crusty old hotel, I've got to tell you. It was built nearly 100 years ago, and I don't think they've put a lick of paint on it ever since. You can hear just about everything at night. You know, Dan scratching his newly grown beard, which causes people to mistake him for Bradley Wiggins. I've had a few Sir Brad, is it Sir Brad? Moments while we've been here, but no, it's not Sir Brad, it's Dan. But we're pleased to have him.
Surprising how many French people there are in San Remo.
There are, we're very close to Nice. But my accent needs a bit of polish. As you can see from the finish line, that's a live clock you're looking at, so 5 hours 46 minutes, and it's clearly got an impact. There's nobody smiling out there just yet, are there?
No, that's the big man Steen Vandenberg from Oudenaarde in Belgium. Very important man for Ethics Quick-Step when it comes to the classics, especially the cobbled ones. But again here, he's the rider who's been doing the predominant amount of work on the front for that Belgian squad. Just behind him, Julian Vermont, another big engine who's hugely important to that team, a younger rider. So Ethics Quick-Step's still playing a big part in terms of making the pace on the front of the actual peloton at the moment. The gap's still coming down. It's under 2 minutes, as you can see there now. And as I said, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see this breakaway, which is now down to 10 riders, get caught on the Cipressa. Just to bring you up to date, Molano from Colombia, and the Colombia team has been taken back by the peloton and will presumably be spat out fairly soon, having been in the break for close to 6 hours.
A big rangy character, Sebastian Molano, and his muscles haven't quite caught up with his frame. He's only 20 years old, and you do find that some of the taller riders generally tend to suffer as debutantes, if you like, although he did go well in Langkawi, as some of you may well know. Seminary, that's the word I was looking for earlier on, and we've just passed it, as you can see. 42.4 kilometres to go. It's holding station at the moment at that 1 minute and 54. When do you think they're going to start to fade, this gang up front? Well,
I mean, it's been coming down for hours now since its maximum gap of close to 8 minutes, and particularly since we came on air. And as I said, the pace in the peloton will continue to increase, and the pace of the break will struggle to increase, even if we've got some riders who've been holding back a little bit more energy than others, or just slightly more experienced or slightly stronger. It's going to be very, very hard for them to really kind of put on the gas and increase the speed which they've been maintaining now for so many hours. Of course, behind it's quite easy in the peloton on these Italian roads that are predominantly flat, just to sit in. So we've had the pace setters at the front, mainly from Katusha over the last 6 hours, with some help from Tinkoff Saxo and more latterly from Ethics Quick-Step. But the guys that have just been sitting in the peloton will have slightly fresh legs. On the front for Movistar now is Alex Dowsett, only his second race of the year. He was due to go for the world hour record just a month or so ago, but crashed out in training whilst out with Mark Cavendish, in fact breaking his collarbone. So it's been a slightly delayed start to the season, and well, pretty incredible to be doing a job on the front after 6 hours when you've only done one race, and that's, I think, was the Grand Prix Nobili last Wednesday. I've got
Rowan Dennis back to be the holder of the world 1 hour record at the end of the year.
Have you?
Go Rowan. He did the job for me in the Tour Down Under as well. He's my new favourite Aussie. There we are, courtesy of the fact that he helped the wine stock. Diana Marina, you're looking at right now. There are a number of them round in this part of the world. And you do see some rather spectacular yachts that look a bit sad. They haven't been slipped for some time, some of them, so they generally tend to be sort of green and mouldy, but I guess it's more of a badge than anything else. In terms of the prize, though, the Milan-San Remo is way up there. For a lot of people, I've got to let you into a secret, myself included, this is actually my favourite classic.
Is it?
Yeah. Ah. I just love the sheer drama of it at the end. It really is fireworks every single time, and frankly, it draws so much talent you can't predict it.
No, Probably just under an hour of racing left for these riders. You can see 40.7 kilometres before they'll reach the finish line. There'll be some very, very nervous people out there right now. Of course, they were nervous before the start, and those nerves do kind of ebb just after you've got into the groove. But this, such a crunch point now for this race as they come up to these final 2 key climbs. Anything can happen. Disaster can strike at any moment if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, I've just tried to shield ourselves from the sun, and it turns out that our shield doesn't work. There we are, along with much else today, I'm afraid to say. 40.2 kilometres, minute and 34 is our gap, and it looks like we've got a little bit of a knockback from the guys out front, and frankly I'm not surprised. It's been a hugely long day for them, and it can feel like you're on a hiding to nothing.
Yeah, well, they're just coming up to the next climb now, which is the Capo Berta, probably the hardest one we've seen actually since live pictures came on. And you can see the breakaway. 2 riders there from Andro, and easy to mix them up actually with the Katusha squad from some distance. Quite similar colours there in the white, red and blue. 10 riders remaining in this break. Martin Chalingi there, the Dutch rider, towards the back in the yellow kit of Lotto Jumbo, looking reasonably fresh still. As I said, it's going to be very, very difficult for a breakaway to go all the way towards the finish. I can't actually remember the last time that happened in Milan-San Remo. Many, many years ago, I would hazard as a guess. The group behind still, I can tell you, being led by Team Sky, Movistar and Cofidis, the French squad, also coming towards the front now as they try to place their main sprinter, Nasser Bouhanni, in the right position for the climbs.
A little bit of a cheeky move. Looked like it was just starting to show itself for MTN Quebecer. Serge Pauwels just picking up the pace. I think he's basically had enough of what appears perhaps to him being a bit of tardiness out front. It's down to just under a minute and 30. Just shy of the 40 kilometres to go marker, and the breakaway is starting to fracture on some of these late kicks. As you can see, they are going to hurt. On the run-in, we still have, of course, the Cipressa and the Poggio to deal with, and these guys have been out here for much of the day. It was an 11-man breakaway. Sebastian Molano, the first of them to fail for Colombia. He's back within the pack, and now it's just starting to be the fresher of the legs within this group that are coming to the fore. Pirazzi still here, great to see. He was a man that was blown off his bike during the Strade Bianche and clearly not carrying too many bruises. Vincenzo Nibali just caught sight of the Italian champion's stripes across his back. Not going to be a feature today, I wouldn't have thought, but Borut Bozic may well be, and Lars Bohm too. And here we are towards the wall, and it is a big, big grind that they are imposing, trying to settle themselves for the big push ahead. You join us with the breakaway starting to suffer, and others too. Yeah,
Edvald Boasson-Hagen. I'm not sure if it's suffering or just being held up very slightly. It looks to me by a small instant. But you can see riders are starting to go out the back now, having done their work. Stein Vandenberg from Ethics Quickstep. Yep, just another slowing. And again, just to repeat myself one more time, it's why it is so important to be towards the front. I think that's Matt Goss, is it, as well? Or maybe it was Sparagli. Didn't get a close look at the number, but quite similar styles of rider in terms of their build. Oh, my chair was...
Can't even rely on the beard these days. So many have them out there. Paolini might well be a late roll of the dice for some. Dan Lloyd's had problems with chairs of late. In fact, you may, well, maybe you didn't remember, but during the Tirreno Adriatico, Dan actually did collapse. It was nothing to do with his alcohol intake. I've got to tell you, he left that till later. Chair gave way. 38.9, minute and 14 then. Time to chug on, and it's Bono, the bearded Bono, newly bearded, just like Dan Lloyd actually, who's going for this, and our breakaway has thinned out big time, minute and 11. Peter Sagan's team, Tinkoff Saxo, have been matched out front. It's he that called for pace and received it. Sagan not visible because he was busy within the pack, but just wanted the legs to be hampered by the support crew for other potential rivals at the end. They're nearly 6 hours in the saddle, Dan. That's an enormous amount of time to be at a racing pace which has exceeded 42 kilometres per hour.
Yeah, it's been a reasonably fast one so far. They have had the wind behind them for most of the way. It's been a northeasterly. The pace really shot up under the impetus of Team Sky, and we've got these difficult conditions here at the moment where there's some dry patches beginning to appear on the roads, but of course some wet still down there as well. So sometimes you can enter into those corners and it looks all dry. You just go in at a speed which you can sustain when it is dry, and if you find a wet patch on the road, that can lead to disaster. Luke Rowe is the guy doing all the damage on the front for Team Sky at the moment. 3 riders behind him.
Whoa!
And here is a crash. Lotto.
Oh, there's a whole load as well. The pace and that, well, what looks to be like a nasty surface, and they're calling them motorcycles to get out of the way as well. And there's a lot of riders who are down and staying down. This is not what you want to see. Then.
Chris Juhl Jensen there for Tinkoff Saxo. It looks like Paul Voss, the German rider from Bora Argon 18. 3 Sky riders have prized themselves off the front. It's a little bit of a surprise given the fact that they were struggling with their tyres and grip recently in Paris-Nice. Who's that from BMC? Looks like Mikhail Shah to me, the tall rider from Switzerland for BMC, one of the Movistar guys. Oh, and Sky went down.
There it was.
That's why we've got 3 Sky riders off the front, because the 4th man hit the deck and the guys behind. Oh, my word.
And it's a brake issue for those further behind as well. They suddenly come around the corner, see an issue on the road. They hit their brakes. You get backing in as well at pace, and here come the remainders of the pack. And this is not what you need to see.
No, I think that is Juhl Jensen, who's taken a severe hit to his head. He won't be taking any further part in this race. Let's hope he's okay. At least he's conscious there. But that's the problem with these roads, of course, Carlton, as well. The walls, as you can see on the side there. Wow. And the road itself, of course, not giving away at all when you hit the deck. And that does look particularly nasty.
It does. We can only wish them well, but Juhl Jensen, as you quite rightly said, Dan, remains conscious. It looks like he's got a boxer's injury, essentially, which is where his helmet will have saved him, but has had its own impact on the eyebrow above the eye socket. But thank heaven, I mean, truth writ large, I guess, that helmets are compulsory for a very good reason.
Yeah, exactly. It's been great to see the UCI introduce compulsory helmets, and yeah, I just hope all of the riders there were okay. We don't actually know who the Team Sky rider was that came off, but I can tell you that there are 3 riders who were on the front still are. Off the front, should I say. Slight gap between them and the main peloton. This breakaway now down to just 40 seconds. Here we go then. Luke Rowe still on the front there. It's Geraint Thomas behind and Ben Swift, the other British rider, there in 3rd place. They're getting kind of a dream delivery here towards the Cipressa as they come up towards that. Not too far now before they reach the foot of the biggest climb, which they've got to do now between here and the finish line.
I think it may well have come too quickly to them, frankly. They've got no option of backing in at the moment, and they're just having to go for this. Ben Swift at the back. G is amongst them, as Dan was quite rightly pointing out. And they are having a long look back at the moment. It's come to them too early. 33.7 kilometres to go. They wouldn't mind being in this position with 2 to go, but it's not the case. Let's have a look again.
Who was that? I wonder if it's Salvatore Puccio, the Italian rider. But of course, disaster for him and also for the Lamprey guy behind. Oh, that must have hurt as they came down there. Luke Rowe did take a quick look round and a glimpse and saw his teammates hit the deck, but he's got 2 of his team leaders on his wheels still, so he's pressing on. It won't be using up the energy at the moment of Geraint or of Ben Swift here. They're not doing any of the work into the wind. It's Luke Rowe doing that all on his own. So they are getting a nice, comfortable ride. They won't be too bothered if they get caught from this point. They are only out the front here by virtue of that crash. So not a bad position for them to be in, but of course they wouldn't have really wanted their teammate to come down.
No, quite right. And I guess if they did garner some success from a moment such as that, there would be a bit of disquiet amongst the pack, really, that other potential pushes have been neutered. No problem for them to go for it. But with this 33 kilometres to go, there's a resettling, as you can see. There is Giant Alpecin getting themselves into position, and the stripes of the German champion, Andre Greipel, just taking a tight line on the inside. Good to see Orica Greenedge as well, just leading the charge back. 4 of their number up towards the front. Luke Durbridge, Turbo Durbo, is there along with Cy Yates, Daryl Impey, and of course Michael Matthews staying in a safe place. It gets ever magnified, doesn't it? The dangers late on. And I guess the road surface there, we were talking about how clean it had been, but clearly not clean enough at that point.
Well, it's probably exactly what I was saying about at the time. You've got some dry patches, you've got some wet patches. Luke Rowe was certainly pushing things on there. The Team Sky rider on the front of the peloton, trying to hurt the legs of the riders behind. And the guy that was in fourth, I think, was Salvatore Puccio, came down quite hard and probably just grabbing a bit too much front brake, maybe thinking he was just going too fast into a corner. And just lost his front wheel there and caused a few riders to come down. I think the crash involving Lloyd Jensen was separate to that one, further towards the back of the peloton. But we're getting some numbers now of riders who were involved in that crash. Number 13, who's... oh, sorry, that's the riders that are in the front, but just says crash of Lloyd Jensen. But as we know, there were plenty more riders who were involved in that as well.
Yes, it did not look nice at all for Lloyd Jensen, I'm afraid. Big head injury for him. Not seriously enough for him to lose consciousness, thank goodness, but a real wake-up call for everybody, I guess. 31.6 kilometres to go, 42 seconds. Looks like there's been a bit of a hiatus after the sheer drama of that push-on, which was Tinkoff Saxo, Sky and Movistar. Sky was still with 3 riders disengaged following that crash, but the breakaway of 4 riders remains up front. So kind of in no man's land for the time being, and I'm just wondering how motivated they're going to be to hold on to this gap as chasers for now.
Well, they've got around about 4 kilometres, this trio now, before they're going to reach the foot of the Cipressa, and at that point I would imagine that Luke Rowe's job for the day will be done. He's an incredible motor. He's really come on this year, in my opinion, in the one-day classics. He's just that little bit stronger. He's got that extra experience from the last couple of years, the World Tour races in his legs, and if anything, that gap's gone up very slightly over the last 2 or 3 kilometres. We've got Orica Greenedge, as you said, Carlton, the Australian World Tour team, on the front of the main peloton with 5 riders. I've seen Kwiatkowski, the world champion there, didn't manage to spot Mark Cavendish towards the front of the group the last time that I saw him. It does seem like that they've got a double-pronged attack, Ethics Quickstep, because Kwiatkowski's got 1 rider with him. You can see on the bottom right-hand side of your screens there, in front of him, 1 rider just looking after the prospects of Kwiatkowski, and presumably the rest of the team sat around Mark Cavendish.
Just over 30 kilometres to go. We have a disintegrating breakaway, which had been 11 riders. It's now looks like just a brace of them, but an intermediate chasing group involves Sky. They have 3 riders who are chasing on: Luke Rowe, Geraint Thomas and Ben Swift. The reason they're divorced from the pack is that there was a fall. As we are inexorably approaching the Cipressa, we'll be there incidentally in just over 3 kilometres time. So it's the run into the important part, the grand climax of this race. And I guess most of the breakaway knew that their days were numbered out front, and as a result they're going to be reabsorbed. So the pack starting to catch up with the Sky riders that did find themselves disengaged, and it's going to be all together before you know it, bar these 2 out front. That is Julien Berard of AG Tour Le Mondial, nearest to you on camera right now, and Serge Pauwels as well from MTN Quebec. This is one of those who has been out for most of the day, Matteo Bono, about to be reabsorbed. So a big coming together before the big climbs of this Milan-San Remo, the Cipressa and indeed the Poggio, before the run into town, and the finish, we remind you, on the Via Roma, back to how it always was. A big one for the sprinters. It's looking very much like that's the way it's going to be. So I think the heart to reach out and grab for this by Swift, Rowe and Thomas from Sky, not really intact. Although they're pushing on right now. They've collected a number of the breakaway riders, but there is the pack. It looks like fireworks later.
Yeah, I'm sure that they're going to get caught, but as I said, I don't think they're going to be particularly worried. They've managed to stay out of all of the fighting and jostling for position coming towards the Cipressa so far. Just under 2 kilometres now before they'll make that right turn onto the climb itself. You can see how stressful it is in this group behind. Wow. They're over 6 hours into this race now, but this is the real crunch point, of course, and there's going to be some very nervous bodies in the peloton. There is the risk of crashing, and Geraint Thomas and Ben Swift, as I said, haven't actually had to do any of the work. They haven't had to push the wind at all. Luke Rowe's been doing that all for them, so they'll be reasonably fresh once they get onto the Cipressa, which could well aid them.
Sunshine, isn't that nice to be able to say? Wind's just ebbing Still gusting ever so slightly, or just eddying, I guess is more the apt description. Most of the wind being provided by the helicopter at the moment. Breakaway is not going to be assisted by that. He's doing a great job of skirting the coast. We had some lovely pictures today, and we're going to get some more. There's some lovely headland shots, isn't there, on this race that really do sum up cycling.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area of the world. Reasonably busy with traffic, of course, when the roads aren't closed for the riders like they are today. Still at the front of the peloton, we've got a number of riders from Orica Greenedge. We've still got some riders from Tinkoff Saxo, although they've taken slightly more of a back seat over the previous 20 Ks or so. Chris Juliensen, as we saw, hit the deck on that previous descent. That trio of Sky riders still hovering there about 13, 14 seconds off the front of this group. And at this rate, they're going to hit the Cipressa with a very small lead.
We have been going very quickly today. I think the wind has helped. It's been a tailwind for much of the day, being a northeasterly, and they heading southwest. And so into town. And we have Matteo Bono, who's doing it for Lamprey as we speak. Pippo Pozzato, former winner, is leading, or team principal, for the men in pink and blue. But Bonifazio, I just wonder, I don't think in this sort of company, in this sort of scenario, he's going to have his fun, I'm afraid, despite being a local boy. Team Sky with 3 riders and the remnants of that breakaway group just to push on, but you can see the pack just mustering like a school of sharks behind, and they have teeth. Just about starting soon to sort themselves into colour order. Don't forget, let's talk about this run-in, because we're on the Cipressa. Once we reach the peak of it with 21.5 to go, we have a descent of 3 Ks, and then it's flattish for 9 kilometres, but it's usually pacey.
Yeah, it's going to be extremely fast now for this last 27 kilometres. Lotto Soudal up there towards the front, trying to chase back this man, but of course the trio of Sky riders who've managed to set themselves free from the peloton courtesy of a crash. There they go, they've taken the right-hand turn. That, again, is another reason for being towards the front. Bono here on the left-hand side of your screens for Team Lamprey Merida is now on the Cipressa, 5.6 Ks long, an average slope there, gradient at 4.1%. It kicks up to 9% around 2/3 of the way up. And this now the big, big crunch point for this group behind.
It is a big crunch point, and you'll see a lot of riders coming out of the saddle already. They are doing so within the pack, and the chase now is on for glory. If this does snap, and stranger things have happened, Nordhaug is a fantastic engine to have on board, and he doesn't mind grizzly conditions. He probably would prefer it to be raining at the moment than sunshine, and that's precisely what we've got to welcome them to San Remo. The motorcycle needs to get a little bit further clear of the riders, and just checking in, and Peter Sagan in his champion's jersey, the Slovak champion, is up there and looking very, very good.
Yeah, Lars Bohm just going through your picture. Mark Cavendish just going through there towards the back end of this peloton. In fact, I say the back end, there's quite a few riders still in touch here.
Yeah, it's a reasonable position for Mark Cavendish, despite all the questions that he's posed of himself today. 24.3 kilometres remaining, and there's a lot of radio talk going on at the moment, because everybody's strategy is having to be amended as we speak, and there's a big kick from BMC once again. Do not be surprised to see Philippe Gilbert on the attack on the final climb to Poggio, or maybe just ahead of that as well. We're just going to crest this one and then head down by 3 before it flattens out, and then more action comes, and it's rolling into us right now.
Yeah, De Marchi, the Italian rider from BMC, comes towards the front. Arredondo still there on his wheel, but still no real splits here in this peloton. I have to say, both Geraint Thomas and Ben Swift are looking very good here right now. They've had an armchair ride, I think you can say, on the way into this Cipressa. They didn't have to do any work, didn't have to do any fighting, and that could play to their advantage, because, as I keep saying, it's about saving energy, and that's exactly what they've done so far. Geraint Thomas goes towards the front. They're all working for Ben Swift today at Team Sky.
Some big numbers here. There is Alexander Kristoff, as you can see,
good.
Defending champion. He's chugging a bit. Look at the shoulders. He's not in a happy place at all, I'm afraid. It looks like it's not going to be him, unless he's kidding, but it certainly doesn't look that way, and you can't hide much deep into a race as we are 6 hours 16 minutes in with 23.7 kilometres to go. I don't think that's Nasser Bouhanni. So ignore the graphic. There we are. What about Androni today, or indeed Astana? Bozic, what's he got today? He's in the pack here.
Yeah, he's going to be there somewhere. I don't see him really threatening the top 3 places, or perhaps even the top 10 today. Lobato is, unfortunately for me, hanging about towards the back. Maybe it's not going to be his day either. Kwiatkowski is there, look, just looking ominous. Next to Stibar in around about 12th place. Cannondale Garmin, who we haven't really mentioned much at all so far today, have also got a man up there. I think that could be the Australian Nathan Haas up there just in front of the BMC rider. So they've got their cards to play as well. They've got Navadauskas here. They've got former Dutch champion Langeveld as well, who I think is still in this peloton.
Orica Green Edge well positioned with Michael Matthews in what looks to be a very, very good position. I know a lot of you down under would love to see it, and frankly, Michael Matthews, bling as he's known due to his his proclivity towards flashy jewellery, I'd love him to expand his collection with a win today. He's a great guy, Michael Matthews, and I just hope he manages to deliver. 23.1 kilometres to go, and they're in the shadows of the Cipressa at the moment, as you can see. As soon as they hit the flatland area, you may well get a brief hiatus before the final attack for the Poggio. And I suspect that's when we're going to see the likes of Philippe Gilbert roll the dice early. Nordhaug's still doing a lot of duty out front, and in fact he's just given into that right now.
Yeah, it's been Geraint Thomas on the front for the last K&a-half or so. They crest the summit of the Cipressa with around about 21.5 kilometres to go, so just over 1 kilometre left on this Cipressa climb now. It's only around about 2%, so anyone that's managed to hang on so far, which I believe includes Mark Cavendish, will probably be here over the top and be licking their lips to try and get over the Poggio. But it has been a hard race. The pace has been reasonably high over here on the Cipressa. And Edvald Bosenhagen there, one of your tips there, Carlton, in 4th place, despite the problems that he had on the lead into the Cipressa.
Yeah, Eddie Voss seems to have recovered himself. It is his #1 target. Sagan just takes a very late bottle with 22.4 kilometres to go.
Bozic and Lobato here in the back of the group. Doesn't look like it's going to be their day today.
Afraid not. There we are. It's one thing to be doing motor pacing away from competition, but competition is where you really find your legs and earn your medals, I guess. And I think that Lobato is in a sad place. He did 285 kilometres of moto training instead of going to the Tirreno Adriatico, averaging 43.8 kilometres per hour for those 285. I think he was trying to put some cadence in his legs, get some memory muscle. Well, it looks like they've forgotten what they'd learnt. 22 kilometres to go, and the sea within sight, and indeed they'll start to think about the finish. They're on the descent right now. It lasts for 3 kilometres, and then it's 9k of virtual flat. In fact, they're on it right now before we kick up again.
There is Mark Cavendish then. He is still in this group. Can he hang on over the top of the Poggio as well and take a second victory here at Milan-San Remo? He's not looking like he's extremely sprightly at the moment, but that's normal for Mark Cavendish. He's never been the best climber in the world, of course. He just has to hang on, and it's what he does very well, is hanging on the climb. He's doing exactly that now. We've seen Daniel Oss on the front. Cannondale Garmin now coming over with Nathan Haas.
Good work as well for Sonny Colbrelli, who's in the frame for Bardiani, one of the outsiders starting today. But nonetheless, one who may feature. Andre Greipel is within this group. Honestly, for everybody, Peter Sagan. Wouldn't it be amazing if Sagan could give himself what would be an enormous boost to his confidence, and a big shut-up sign as well for those even within his own team who've been critical of his performances?
Yeah, it would be a real turn-up for the books. I think Degenkolb's also safe up there inside the top 5, in fact. 4th place or 3rd place now. John Degenkolb coming up here towards the front, so he's another rider who's looking very good. Christoph, to me, certainly didn't look very good. He was not comfortable at all going up the Cipressa a few moments ago.
20.8 to go, looking at the back end of Sur Le Moine, and you can see that the sea looks dark, which tells you that there's clouds over there, and they're still billowing, and indeed will probably occasionally burst, but right now we're hoping that everyone just stays safe for this run-in with 20.6 to go. It's a very elevated and elite group that's starting to thin down. It's almost like we're panning for gold here, and in fact there's been a bit of spill along the way, I'm afraid. A lot of decent names at the top of the day that you might have thought about have unfortunately come unstuck due to the distance apart from anything else. And right now it's an ever more concentrated elite group that are going to be bidding for victory. This is going to be fascinating.
It certainly will be. It's quite a big group, of course, as you just said, Carlton, that got themselves over the Cipressa just a few moments ago. They've got this descent now, which is reasonably technical. Not going absolutely flat out here at the moment. We've got Lamprey on the front, Lotto Soudal, 2 riders for them just behind that. Just to remind you, between the foot of the Cipressa descent here and the start of the Poggio itself is just a tiny fraction over 9 kilometres. So there is a point at which they can just collect themselves slightly, take an extra drink on, really get those last arm warmers off, etc., before they reach the Poggio and the big fight before it.
So 18.3, so in a kilometre's time they'll be at the base. Then there's a 9-kilometre run before they start the climb of the Poggio to finish proceedings more or less today. That's where the big launch pad will come. There's a lot of checking over shoulders going on. Everyone wants to know where the opposition is. It's difficult to catch any kind of vision because it's not straight road, and you're so busy trying to handle the bike in a situation such as this, you can't really take account of where your opposition is or indeed where your team is. You just kind of got to get off it safely and make sure you keep the cadence up.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for these guys at the back to really do their best as they come off the Cipressa here. It's going to be very, very fast at the front. They're going to sprint out of the foot of the descent. And, of course, if you're at the back in 60th, 70th position, it does make it that little bit harder. Still on the front then is Lotto Soudal, the Belgian World Tour outfit. We've got Lamprey up towards the front here too. Katusha are still here, but doesn't look to me to be Alexander Kristoff's day today. John Degenkolb up there towards the front. BMC have been very prominent trying to make things as hard as possible for everybody else in the race on the Cipressa. No doubt we'll see attacks from Philippe Gilbert on the Poggio, perhaps Greg Van Avermaet as well, but we've still seen him go on the attack already up the Cipressa.
18 kilometres to go then, and the attacks are just starting to roll in, and we've got one now. This is a very big early roll of the dice from Daniel Oss. He's got a big engine in moments such as this. He's a great man to have up the road. They've got other options to play, BMC, the team in the black and red. For others, it's just plain been a black day, I'm afraid, and I think some are getting found out late on. Good roll.
Well, Daniel Oss has been going incredibly well over the last couple of weeks. He's predominantly a domestique, and that's kind of what he's doing right here, right now. He's just trying to soften up everybody in the peloton, and it means, of course, that BMC are not going to have to do anything behind. Looks to me like a Team Sky rider actually is going to be coming across to Daniel Oss fairly shortly. Could that be Geraint Thomas again? You can see him on your screens there right now, just coming up towards, he's on the top left of your screen. So it is starting to get a little bit nervous in this peloton. It is Geraint Thomas coming up here to join Daniel Oss, but it's a long way now until they get to the Poggio.
17 kilometres. G starting at, well, he was available at 200 to 1 not that long ago. I imagine he's shortening rapidly as we speak. And significantly, he's not looking behind. He's not trying to find out where everybody else is. This was the moment that Daniel Oss decided to light it up, and he's been tagged by Geraint Thomas just for now. Is that just a marker, or is G going to just sit in and say, well, do the work if you want, Mr. Oss. I'm going to sit here and wait for my chance. So, brace of talent, but others as well are just starting to think about it. Isn't it funny how cagey this goes? We've got a Trek Factory Racing rider who's just gone off. Didn't quite get a tag on it. Fabian Cancellara, of course, it's a big target for him. He's quite calm these days. I guess when you've achieved so much, you can afford to be. But he just said quite calmly, yes, of course, I will be going for victory in the Milan-San Remo. As if he'd go for anything else. Well, Oss is going for it at the moment, and he's flicking out the arms all over the place like a floundering youngster in a paddling pool. And just joining him, as you can see, and coming up and just almost deigning to help out, Geraint Thomas. 2 up the road, and look at the quality we've got here. We have Greipel. We have what was a very early roll for Zdenek Zdibar, not quite, and we're looking at our world champion.
Yeah, he's at the back of the peloton. Not sure exactly what's happened. I don't think it's anything to be too concerned about, but we've got our 2 leaders, Daniel Oss and Geraint Thomas, coming towards 15 Ks to go. There is Kristoff talking to his teammate Paolini. As I said, he's made it into this group, but I don't think he's feeling especially good today. It'll be interesting to see if he manages to haul himself over the Poggio. He's got a few teammates, as you can see, to help him do that. This is going to be so interesting. Who is the team doing the work at the front? I can tell you Lamprey have got one man there at the moment. But this is a good move from BMC and from Team Sky. Predominantly they're working for other riders. BMC predominantly for Greg Van Avermaet and Philippe Gilbert, and Team Sky for Ben Swift. And this will allow them a free ride behind. The responsibility of chasing will rest on the shoulders of other teams. And, well, who knows if there's a slight lull in proceedings behind, and these two could build up a decent gap.
Luca Paolini in conversation with Alexander Kristoff, as you saw, and there was a big stroke of the beard like a sage of old, contemplating what the bad news is to mean. Well, there's no runes to cast here, but there'll be some big names who have got a very, very big interest, and I suggest that Andre Greipel is looking very good indeed. He's bouncing on the pedals right now and staying where he needs to. He's almost looks like a one-man band. He hasn't got a great deal of backup out there. I think he might well just have to do it all on his lonesome. He just comes alongside Alejandro Valverde, who's also very much involved for Movistar, a man who could never be discounted. I guess he's got free rein now that Lobato is clearly giving himself grade F on this day. 14.3 kilometres to go, only 20 seconds now, but 20 seconds to some capable riders up front. Some teams are going to have to start considering this as serious.
Well, these are two very, very strong rouleurs when it comes to flat roads, so they'll be going extremely quickly despite the hours that they've got in their legs, coming up to 6.5 since kilometre zero for all of the guys in this race at the moment. I have to say, Carlton, I saw BMC lining up towards the front of the peloton just a few moments ago. Greg Van Avermaet with two teammates still for support there, but I didn't actually see Gilbert. That could be him. I think that's Dillier still on the bottom right-hand side of your screens. I haven't seen Gilbert just at this point in time.
Well, we said there was some big scalps today. Unfortunately, a lot of them have actually been left on the roadside. Almost literally, I'm afraid, for Jules Jensen, who got himself a nasty head injury, and we wish him the very best. He's out of the race.
There he is, Philippe Gilbert. He's just making his way up to the back end of the BMC trio there. Still just one rider on the front, so that's why the gap's continuing to grow. It was 19 seconds. They've got another 5 in the last kilometre or so. They're going to need quite a bit, of course, to if they want to try and get over the Poggio in front, but it can just play into the hands of the likes of Os and Geraint Thomas. If a small group prides itself off and they manage to hold on to them, then well, they're going to have some representation, both of those teams, at the front of the race at a crucial point.
Pozzato's up here for Lampre Merida. Goodness me. I guess if you are considering strategy, one which is reasonably well announced is that Philippe Gilbert will be going for it off the Poggio. He's got no other option than to go early. No,
there's going to be plenty of riders faster than Philippe Gilbert if it comes down to a sprint. Unless it's a small group, of course. He has got a decent turn of speed, but he's not going to be matching the likes of Mark Cavendish and Kristoff if they manage to get over the Poggio. But just a few kilometres to go now. Let's just remind you, 9.5 Ks.
30 seconds.
Is where they'll take this right-hand turn into the Poggio. So they've got 3 Ks to go. And as you said, Carlton, 30 seconds, it seems like a decent gap. But when you put this effort in on the flat between these two climbs, you're so far into the race. Once they start attacking behind, that gap will come down pretty quickly.
On the switchback, they get sight of the hares. Here come the hounds.
Well, I can tell you that sitting ominously in around about 10th place is a man we haven't talked much about at all in this race, and that is Alejandro Valverde. Geraint Thomas gets rid of the BMC rider Daniel Os, but that could mean disaster for Geraint Thomas because, of course, BMC, as I said before, have got multiple riders behind, and they will now start chasing and setting things up for their team leaders, Greg Van Avermaet and Philippe Gilbert.
He's heading for the crest, but he almost binned it into the barbecue area of that little villa. Geraint Thomas is going for this. I guess the rest might just believe and possibly stall once they see Os coming back in. Os was always going to be on other duties for the likes of Gilbert and maybe Van Avermaet. And so I guess the freest hand was always Geraint Thomas. But has he got what it takes? We remind you that off the descent, the flat section and the lead into San Remo has been shortened by 1 kilometre. So will it play into his hands? And look at the wind, suddenly picks up and starts blowing at the top. It's a tailwind. Again, that will help him, but it's going to be tongue out, eyeballs out to the line. And I see he's pulled the radio out as well. He doesn't want any distractions at the moment with 7.1 kilometres to go. And here come the pack.
Yeah, 1.5 kilometres is roughly the distance that we've got before we get to the top of the Poggio. We still haven't seen any attacks from the big climbers, the main favourites yet. Alexander Kristoff is getting an armchair ride all the way up this climb.
Kristoff is, Edvald Boasson-Hagen is also in a pleasant place. This man is in a whole world of pain. He's on his own at the moment. He still hasn't reached the peak. It may well not be the most focused alpine climb on the planet, this. Really a bump for a club man, but it feels like a huge test. There is Oss. He still holds a distance between himself and the pack. Maybe he's been given the get-go because Philippe Gilbert knows he can't do what he would want to. Goodness me, 6.6 to go, 14 seconds now.
Only 1K, 1,000 metres for Geraint Thomas before he gets to the top of the Poggio. I still can't believe we haven't had any attacks. Look at the size of this group coming up behind. Fabian Cancellara, I was sure, was going to make his move up here on the Poggio, but time is running out for all of those guys.
It is, the big punchers, and it looks to me like Edvald Boasson-Hagen has decided to pick up the pace and just move himself into a better position. Good news for Greipel fans is that I believe he's actually got back on. Paolini picks it up and just tries to muster his way and just head round Oss. Here we go. Well, the world's champion is here, and Gilbert's going to have a kick. He is, and who's he going to drag with him? Well, Stibar's there. What's going to happen? Is it going to be these two mighty power men have just kicked off the front? And Cancellara, for the time being at least, can't respond.
15 seconds, though, to Geraint Thomas now. Philippe Gilbert, Stibar in second. We've got an Androni rider, Gatto, I think, there in third place. Then it's Fabian Cancellara, then it's Alejandro Valverde. But they can't make the difference, Carlton. They can't create the gap. Here goes Van Avermaet.
Van Avermaet has just got on the attack, and this man is in the bird seat now, but it's only by 9 seconds. Van Avermaet hugs the wall. Almost grazes it and looks behind. This is his big moment. It's not going to be about Gilbert, it's going to be about that man. And we look at Greipel a little bit further back, Nibali trailing him. It's a big pickup and a big gap to make up, but 5 seconds is all that G holds. And look at this. This is Michael Matthews, tanned up and ready for action, and that is Sagan in front of him, a great wheel to get on.
Well, this is a strong group just coming up to the wheel of Greg Van Avermaet behind. We are finally starting to see a few very small but perhaps significant gaps appearing between these riders. It's always very close racing here on the Poggio, especially when it's dry. Very nice for the riders that the roads have dried out. Geraint Thomas looks like he's going to lead over the top, though.
He'll lead over the top, but I suspect he might well be pleased to see Van Avermaet. I can't imagine that he thought he could hold off everybody until the very last, and maybe it's going to be some help. But what kind of help? It may be a drink he is offered that carries a little bit of poison. 5.3 kilometres to go. We're off the Poggio, this beautiful sweeping road. It's so difficult to take, even side by side. You have to be in a sinuous line, and it leads, don't forget, onto a flatter section, which has been trimmed by just over a kilometre today. 5.1 to go only of this great race, and still we don't know the winner.
Yeah, it's starting to come together for these 5 riders at the front. Geraint Thomas, Greg Van Avermaet just coming onto his wheel now. Then we've got the trio of riders, the big favourites for today's race, Peter Sagan, Fabian Cancellara, and one more rider. I need to get an idea on that. Michael Matthews, of course, it was. But they're all coming back together behind, and who's got over from the sprinters?
Who's got over and who is going to managed to impose themselves. Edvald Boasson-Hagen's in a good place. Valverde's here, incidentally, is about 8 back. Sagan's got to believe, but so is Michael Matthews. What a great pairing that is. And Van Avermaet sails by Geraint Thomas, who just immediately gets onto his wheel and just tries to preserve something. At least it's a downhill section, and they can put a little bit of power back into their legs. Cancellara's still very much involved and with an option, and Greipel at least has got a spare man up the road. Maybe he can lean on him just a little bit. Haven't seen much of those CCC Sprandi Polkovici riders in the orange, but they're just distanced for the time being. It's sinuous, it's fast, and it's going to get dramatic. Great chance for Bling Matthews to have a go here. What a success it would be for Orica Greenedge and Australia if Michael Matthews managed to take this race today. He's looking extremely... Oh, who was that came down there? Only saw the bike on the road. Vincenzo Nibali hanging on the back. Don't think he's going to make an impact on this Milan-San Remo this year yet again. Towards the front, though, it's all coming back together, Carlton, isn't it? Sagan versus Matthews is what I'm thinking at the moment, but we have a lot still to be decided. And just look who's getting back on. This is absolutely fantastic. Matthews does have a teammate that's also struggling to help out. Is it Durbridge? Not quite sure. It'd be amazing if he managed to get in and
Cielek's down.
We've got former winner Philippe Gilbert as well.
Kwiatkowski, I think,
on
as
the
well.
Deck. My goodness, and that's Stebar as well. Also out of it, and that's a very second-hand helmet because he felt good. He felt good, and he tries to take his bike, having the back wheel disengaged. He's not going any further, I'm afraid. 3.3 kilometres to go. A lot of dreams get broken on the Poggio, and we've seen a few more smashed right now.
Yeah, we certainly have. Michael Matthews looking fantastic there in 4th place. He's got Valverde just on his wheel. I think that could be Tim Wellens from Lotto Belisol up there as well. Lotto Soudal, should I say.
Wow, 3.2 to go. And this is where it gets very, very cagey out of a select group. What's happened to Andre Greipel? Yeah, fair enough. We've seen some men on the deck. They're not injured. Let's get back up front where we need to be. 3 kilometres to go only. And the Flamme Rouge, you'll be honest, before you know it, they come down here and then we have this trimmed run in. 2.3, so in 500 metres time, that is where we are flat and heading for home. Let's talk about the turns that they've got to deal with. There's 2 nasty 90 degrees in the last kilometre.
Well, we could be in for some late attacks here. We're almost at the foot of the Poggio now. We have got those 2 turns, Carlton, in the last kilometre, just after they go through the Flamme Rouge. Greg Van Avermaet, I think that is still on the front, giving the absolute maximum for BMC. Geraint Thomas still on the wheel. We haven't seen much of a change of positions. A lot is going to come down now to exactly how many teammates some of the riders here have got, and whether or not we see any late attacks from some of the riders who can't wait for the sprint finish. Here we are at the foot of the Poggio now.
Sagan must feel like all his Christmases have come at once for the time being. He's got a couple of men who are motivated in front of him. He's not being lent on for the time being, and then suddenly he finds himself at the front and thinks, you know what? I'm just going to have to go for this because in an out-and-out sprint, maybe there are others here. Maybe he looks at those who are around him and thinks, I've got the beating of them all. I'm not going to push too hard. And he eases up and says, no, don't think that I'm going to set this one alight. Oh, this is great chops and changes going on right now.
Well, Geraint Thomas is on the front now. He's looked behind him. He's seen that Ben Swift is there in 4th position. You've got Michael Matthews on the wheel. Van Avermaet still there. Valverde still there. Sagan just trying a cheeky little move to try and make his way off the front just then. But he's going to have to wait for the sprint now too.
Trying to see if Andre Greipel has moved up. Still searching, our eyes dancing all over the place. Oh, goodness me. And we've got, I believe, Christoph also very much involved. 1.3 to go. They still don't want to reach out. We're heading for the Flamme Rouge. Don't forget, there's 2 big turns still to come.
Edvald Boasson-Hagen is still in this group, Carlton. There he is on the left-hand side of your screens. I think the only representation now for MTN Quebec. We've got Kreuziger, I believe, coming towards the front. He'll do a turn as well and try and keep this all together for Peter Sagan. 1 kilometre to go.
Under the Flamme Rouge, and then these 2 turns, one at 8.50, one at 7.50. And the nasty one, it will approach before you know it. They've gone over to the other side of the road. I'm just having a look. Is that Lars Bohm who's here? Not quite sure for Astana for the time being. 700 metres. They've made that double turn. The camera can't quite keep up. Everything's blowing up all at once. Big turn they make. They're heading for the final line, and it is Katusha right now. Oh, and Degenkolb's involved, and he just has a little bit of a shoulder war going on. Still we wait. We want a heads-up shot as quickly as we possibly can. Here we are.
Christoph in 2nd place. Michael Matthews there in 4th. We've also got, I think, Tim Wellens up there with a teammate on his wheel. Is that Chris Bookman? He's a good sprinter. Degenkolb's there. Sagan further down. Nasser Bouhanni is here from Cofidis.
All of a sudden, Bouhanni, the prize fighter, but what's Matthews got? Can he stick one on them? The Orica Green Edge man has a look. He stays by the barriers. He's going to have to come out and play his hand. He's boxed in at the moment by Degenkolb, and they're going for the line. Matthews is not going to make it there, I'm afraid. Oh, what a superb
John
win that
Degenkolb
was. John
wins Milan-San Remo.
He nails it. We haven't seen anything of him all day, and the man with the smallest moustache has the biggest smile on the planet. Degenkolb brings it in. What about that? What about that? Wow. There's nothing to laugh about for those behind, I can tell you. John Degenkolb is our winner. And he came from out of the fog, essentially, on a clear day and delivered. check this out. Degenkolb in about 8th place right now, and he starts to wind it up. In fact, he almost boxed in Matthews when he thought about going. Look at the green edge man. He's over towards the barriers, thinks I'll switch the inside. Can't do so. Degenkolb had shared shoulders earlier on. Degenkolb picks up the drive. Matthews is locked out, has a look over, can't deliver. But Degenkolb can, and he's being drafted out there. Christoph in a fantastic position, racing for the line, but Degenkolb timing his run. Sagan playing catch-up. Matthews moving to try and find some space, but Degenkolb hits it and denies Christoph at the line, with Matthews and Sagan also involved. Great names, great racing, great champion. Yes, producing another chapter of this fabulous event. Average race speed, 43.272 kilometers per hour. You try and doing that over such a long distance. Amazing. Fantastic race. Degenkolb takes it ahead of Christoph, Michael Matthews, Peter Sagan, Bonifacio, Nasser Bouhanni, Cancellara, Kimolai, Galopin, Bosenhagen. It's a great top 10, but what a great winner we've got.